look at this. All these people, they really want to know what Jesus has done in your life. All right, so we want to welcome up Raquel. So Raquel, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing. Let's start there. Let's go back all the way to when you were a baby.
All the way.
No, you don't have to do all that, but why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background?
Hello everyone. My
Or
name
your
is-
upbringing, actually. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Raquel, as you heard. So I would say I grew up in a Christian home. My mom is a very strong believer in God. She has faith. 5 kids. My mom raised, and without my dad wasn't around life. He abandoned us. I believe I was 2 years old when he left. So that really impacted my life. I was a good kid with a good heart. Until I hit those teenage years, I became really rebellious against my mom, and my brother was helping my mom raise us. And
So you were going to church the whole time, like as
Yes,
you were growing up, like a little kid, and then even into your teenage years?
Yes,
So how old were you when you started rebelling?
I believe I was about. Well, I stayed in church. Everyone had backslid, and I stayed in church. And so I think I was about 13. Yeah, I was 13 because that's when I started smoking pot.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if people did that. Hey, so tell us, were you ever saved? Like, did you ever give your life to Jesus? Did you ever make a commitment? Do you remember being a child and saying, you know what, I want to give my heart to Jesus Christ?
I do remember that. I remember giving my life to God and it coming out of me, knowing and understanding what was going on. I believe I was around 9 at the first church we were going to where I grew up in. And then when we moved over to another church here in Bellflower, I remember they would do like trips to Mexico, and I would translate. Help translate, so I would do Spanish translating. Obviously, I was a Spanish girl. There was a lot of white people coming in from Idaho. Yeah.
So then you start smoking weed, and at that point,
Yeah. Then I fell into like, oh, you don't smoke, and I didn't. And at
was there
first-
something that triggered it, or did you just
It
kind
was
of
the
like just say?
influences. Honestly, I think it was influences, and just like also not holding down to being in church. I kind of did get discouraged seeing that I was the only one left. From
Or
my
like
family.
all your peers, or your
From my family, I was the only one left going to church.
Oh, really?
Everyone backslid.
like your siblings and everybody?
My siblings and my mom. So my aunt would pick me up, and she would take me to church. And so little by little, I don't know. I was obviously a kid, so I, started to explore in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's tough when your whole family just starts going to church and you're just like,
Yeah, and I remember someone telling me, like, evangelist, he told me, you'd be the light to your family. Keep holding, but I didn't. I didn't hold on. I decided to smoke pot, and because I was encouraged by people that would, kind of mock the fact that I didn't do that. And eventually I started smoking pot, and I actually smoked weed until recently. I would say about 2018.
okay, so you were a teenager, you just go off and you backslide and you're doing all that, and so then what happens? I mean, you become an adult at some point, obviously, right?
Yeah, so from pot, I went over to crystal meth and drinking and partying. I would leave too long.
Wait, slow it down. You were a tweaker.
I did do crystal meth.
Okay,
and I was after that.
let's start over. You need to say, I was a tweaker.
I was tweaker. I did do that. Well, I'm proud that that I'm not. So.
No, I understand, but just to communicate, get it out there. You start off with speed, and I'm assuming you were partying and doing all of that, right?
Yes, I was partying, running with a certain neighborhood, and
You were chola too, huh?
well, I was always hanging out with this neighborhood, and I had specific friends that introduced crystal meth into my life.
Got it.
And I got hooked on it for a couple of years,
For when you say a couple.
like 2 years. Yeah.
And so, but that being said, at some point, I mean, you have children, right? You have a daughter who's what, 14?
Yes.
And then you have, obviously you have Gigi who's about what, 9? And so tell us, like, at some point you got into a relationship, you got married and all that, right?
Yes. So I was obviously partying and doing my thing. My mom had no idea where I was at. I would take off to Vegas. I'll tell I was at my friend's house. I'll be gone for the weekend. She didn't even know I was in Vegas. That's how I learned how to drive. eventually I turned 19, I met my husband. So I was still not saved. Always knew about God, obviously, because I grew up and I had it in the back of my head. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. I met him. I fell in love. And, I remember we were pregnant with Faith, and I was like, I don't want church to be an issue. Don't bring up your Catholicism, and I will not bring up my Christianity. We will not baptize our kids because I was still saying that. I wanted my kids.
So you were living for God, but I mean, you had that.
Yeah, I knew. I still had that little bit of conscience. Like, I was a conviction somewhere back there, but not enough to get my life straight.
Okay.
So I met my husband. We had my daughter. We had a very tough relationship. It was a lot of physical and mental abuse on both of us. My daughter had to experience a lot of stuff. She had to grow up really fast because she had to go through a lot with us. Eventually, years down the road, we got married when my son was born. The year after he was born, we finally got married. He'd been asking me since we met, but I would always say no. But we had my son, and I was like, okay, let's do it. My mom kept telling me, like, you're not living right. And eventually we got married. And I wanted to marry him, like
So you had two. At that point you had Faith and you had Gigi.
At that point I had Faith and I had Gigi. Gigi was a year old when I got married in April of 2013. And fast forward to 2016, we were still having problems. I remember actually going, we got into a fight and I hit him and in front of the cops. So they took me in and I had to stay in there for a while and then do service with the community. They were like, do you want to go to domestic violence classes? You can pick wherever you want. And so I was like, well, what are my options? They gave me a list of places and I saw a church. I ended up going there. And they were like, if you come to church, you don't have to pay the $25 fee for your class. So I had to go once a week. And, I was obviously still smoking weed. So I was like, I don't want to spend money on. So I really did think like that, which is sad. But I didn't want to spend my money on paying for the class. So I would go to church. I was doing the classes myself, and I was.
So how was your relationship at home with your husband and all of that?
It was like love and hate, and I would always say like we're like a tornado and a volcano, which is bad because
tornado and a volcano.
Yeah, no.
I
don't know why. That's just how I pictured it, but it was really bad. It was, it would be too physical and just like
But at this point, you weren't right with God. You're going to these classes. You're
going
to church. Right, you're going to classes and church.
Yeah, I had to go to church to get the classes.
And then at some point, did everything just kind of come to a head?
Yes, at some point I decided to call it quits. I left my home. I had to make a decision. I felt at the time that it wasn't getting fixed. It was too physical. So I said, I need to go. I started staying in my car. My kids had a home. They were safe with their dad, so I left them there. I would visit here and there, but it wasn't the same as me being in the home. That was in 2016.
And at this point, did you start smoking meth?
No, I smoked meth before the kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was 17 to 8. That was 16 to 18. But no, so with the kids, I left, and at that point, Elizabeth, my cousin.
So this is about 2016, right?
That's 2016 when I had moved out.
And you're living somewhere else.
And I'm going back. I backtracked to all my old lifestyle except for the men.
Okay, got it. So
you're
like living the single life, but yeah, you're married and you had a husband and children, but you're just living somewhere else.
Because I kept smoking, I was drinking. Eventually I got my own apartment and, I had parties there or like kickbacks. We just hang out,
Yeah.
just coke and bong.
And so Elizabeth, your cousin.
In 2016, I believe.
That's when Elizabeth.
At the end of 2016, she invited Faith, my daughter,
to church. Yeah, because Elizabeth started coming in November of 2016.
Yeah, so she right away started inviting Faith to church.
Which is your oldest daughter?
My oldest daughter, Faith. She was about 9 years old at the time. In 2004 to 2017, they invited me to church, the Paramount little building.
Yeah, this was in the other building where we were at before this one.
And I remember when.
What was your experience when you first came in?
Well, when I walked in, I was like, what office kind of building? Because it's so tiny.
It's so small.
So my mind was like.
Like, you guys have to understand, our old building was probably half the size of this area. It was like really, really small, right?
It reminded me of like the AA meetings because it was so tiny and like just everybody.
And so
I remember my first service. I don't remember what was being preached, but I remember I was like really high and I was looking at Pastor and I was like, why is he like just staring like?
Can you tell everybody the story real quick? How you come and you just like check out my doctrine because you thought you were going to say your cousin or something?
So at first that's how it was. The first day was very weird because I really felt that a lot of the message was directly to what I was experiencing in my life. But I was like, what, who told them? You know, and I was kind of like assuming, or my cousin was like saying stuff, you know? And whatever, fast forward, I did come a couple times and I remember I would be like, well, I want to see if they're actually preaching the word of God or is it just like, you know, a lot of talk. Because I've gone to other churches in between the time that I have been backslide, kind of jumping around.
So you're like high, but you're trying to be a theologian.
Yeah. So I was high, but I wanted to like figure it out myself, see if it fit. I know. So anyway, so eventually I remember not staying. I was like, no, this is just not for me. And I left. That was in December. I just went to, I think it was 2 services, and I never went out for a while. You know, my daughter was still going with Elizabeth. She would pick her up, and even when I lived in my apartment, Elizabeth would go over there and get her. Wherever she was at, she would go get her Faith, and she's like, "Where are you? I'll go get her." And I'm just like, "Your dad's coming for you." So in 2019, I was in between that time, I was going through a lot. I was actually going through depression. I felt like I felt as a wife, I felt as a daughter, I felt as a mother. You know, I would constantly battle like suicidal thoughts. I would go to work always on time at 6:30. I would be there. I was an assistant manager, so I would open my shop, perform, top of the line. And as soon as I got paid, it was like, okay, pay my rent, pay my car note, and all of this is pay money before I could smoke weed, which is really bad, you know. And but I was really going through it in my mind, and I would just be like, and I'd cry, and I'd be like, you know, God help me, like I don't want to feel this way because I knew that in reality that's who I need to call on, but I didn't want to let go of that lifestyle. It was like something holding me back.
So what was the turning point? You're going through all these suicidal thoughts and all these different things. What was the turning point?
My turning point, I would say, was, I don't know, God just dealt with me. I came back to the church. I was invited. I remember it was a Mother's Day in 2018. And I decided to give my life to Christ, and then from there on, I was like, you know, I'm not gonna be perfect overnight, but God's gonna be working in me. And, you know, since then, it's been.
What was it about that day that just, I mean, obviously it was Mother's Day, but what was it about that day?
A lot of things, a lot of factors played into it, you know, the conviction of knowing, like, my daughter should praying for me, and I'm over there living my crazy life, and, you know, not being able to be with my kids, and like just knowing like I don't have them, like you know, I could be investing all this extra money to like my kids or to just making something happen, and it was just, you know, wanting my family back together. And so that day we were at church, I had my son with me and I had my daughter with me, and you know, it was just time for me to not try to fix stuff on my own.
Oh wow, yeah. Can you tell everybody real quick, like the restoration that God did with you and your mom?
Yes, so during
because I think that's important.
Yes,
I think because, you know, when a lot of times when we come, right, to church for the first time, like we made a whole mess of our lives.
Yes.
We've hurt people, we've been hurt, there's been a lot of damage done in relationships, so I think it's important for people to know, especially people that might not be saved or people that might have a similar story.
So I destroyed my relationship with my mom. I would always blame her and tell her she didn't love me. You know, I always made myself, because of what I went through as a child, of not having my dad there, I would blame my mom, that it was her fault that he wasn't there. So we've never really had love with each other ever. Like, I don't remember her hugging me as a kid. I can't remember that. If it happened, I don't remember it. restored two really important relationships to me, and one of them is my mom. I remember like she started seeing a change in me, and she hugged me and she told me she loves me, and I hadn't got that from her for I don't remember ever happening. So it really got to me because I was like, oh okay, like I am loved, you know. That was something that I really battled with, was because I hurt her. I know I hurt her. I did decisions. She would tell me not to do stuff, and I would still do it, and you know whatever life threw at us. But I know that it restored it, and you know me and her, like even if I feel like we're uña y mugre, but she was in my like rose together, like I'm always bugging her.
Uña y mugre, for those of y'all that don't know, is like fingernail and dirt, right?
Yeah,
like inseparable.
Just right there. And now I'm like always constantly, you know, if you know, just trying to be around. I want to be with my mom. Like I want to be around her. I want to enjoy the hugs. I want to enjoy the kisses. I like bugging her. She doesn't. Sometimes she's like, no, leave me alone. But I'm just like bugging her, and it's something I would never do before. It was never physical. I was never able to like hug anybody or be loving. So now I want that. Like I'm constantly like trying to get that.
And then you were also able to come back home and be with your husband.
Yes.
And you have a new baby now.
Yes. So we have a new baby. So it did restore my relationship with my husband. I invited him to the church. I think the second time I was there, I remember him coming in and me sitting like moving, scooting over when he sat next to me. He still wore his ring. I didn't wear mine at the time, and I just remember. After that, it was like, let's try to work on this. And I still believe that without God, there is no working on anything. Like, I completely have to give everything to God and above all, have faith. Without seeing the things that are happening, without seeing it's going to happen, I have faith that it's going to happen, and I claim it in the name of Jesus. So that's where I stand now. It's just holding on to my faith. He comes here Sunday morning, so I'm like, okay, step by step, and God's going to do it. He's going to get hold to him. But our relationship is, you know, it's like 100 times better than it was before. Because
And obviously,
it was obviously physical, and we haven't done that. So
and then what God has done in you, because
Yes.
you used to look at me like I was suspect, huh?
yeah, I would definitely look at Pastor like, what's going on?